Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 55 of the Capitalist Corner. Did I screw that up?
Four, Mark. I just told you
54.
four.
I just realized that I screwed that up. Hey, welcome to episode 54 of the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz. He's also, of course, the host of his own show, The Rational Egoist, and he is right now representing the American Capitalist Party over there in Porcfest in New Hampshire. He's already had some great debates. Hopefully, he's been filming some of these things and winning friends, influencing people, and convincing the libertarians to take a move from the LP to the CP.
Hey, listen, I don't know if I've ever been accused of winning friends and influencing people, but we'll go with that. I know if we miss many more days, we're not going to be influencing much of anybody. People are starting to get pissed. I'm getting texts and everything else. What they don't understand is, like, I'm borrowing this StreamYard from my friend. So in order to have you do it, then I'd have to hook you up to his thing. I don't know if he'd go for it. So we skipped a day. What's the big deal, you know?
You know, sometimes we got to do that. Michael's over there because I can't be in New Hampshire because I have a convention that I'm going to in White Plains, New York, I believe.
Are you serious? Are you going to use that as an excuse, really?
That's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it.
But I'm going to be in White Plains too.
Oh, you are, but you're doing God's work right now over there, trying to sway anarchists away from their evil ways and into
people are waving
into capitalism. What's up, folks?
They can't hear you, dude. I got the headphones on. He says hi, everybody.
Hi. See, we love his shows.
They said they love your shows.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. This is his best show right here. There's none better than this one.
Thank you for that.
He says thank you very much.
There are some nominating bodies that, of course, would disagree with you, but we will go with this for now. So there's quite a bit of interesting news going on today to talk about. I don't know if some of this stuff can be talked about from a uniquely capitalistic perspective, but they're certainly grabbing headlines. And you did send me a Grok inquiry as to the accuracy of Dave Smith's assertions respecting Israel.
Yes,
I want at some point.
We will get to that, but perhaps first, and listen, folks, if my reception sucks, I'm sorry. You know, we're out in the wilderness here. You can see behind me the mountains. But I happen to have met his guru this morning. You know, we went for a walk, Subby and I, because I was trying to get Wi-Fi. No, but we did have. No, we did not hold hands either. But Subby and I, we had to shower together this morning. But that's neither here nor there. They're saying your reception is off. That's my fault because of the connection. But don't sweat it. We're still going to put on a great show. So anyway, so Subby and I go for a walk. I'm trying to get Wi-Fi. And while I'm over in the front, I see Scott Horton show up. So he goes in and he's having trouble registering because of the way the place is set up. So I said, hey, Scott, if you go over there, you know, you could register. So he went there. So I waited till he got done. And I said to him, very nice. I said, hey, how you doing? I shook his hand. I said, my name is Mike Liebowitz. I said, I would like to debate you on the morality of Israel's foreign policy. Very polite. Now, I was under no illusions that he would say yes. I understand the guy's busy, but I'm also of the philosophy that you don't know unless you try, so you give it a shot. Now, so if he just said to me, you know, I'm very busy, I'm sorry, or even just I'm very busy, I can't do it, I would say, okay, that's cool, you know what I mean? But instead, he says in the worst tone, oh, forget it, pal. Pay your dues for 15 years and then come see me. Like, with the utmost of self-importance, it's like, dude, like, do you think you're that important? Like, you're really not. Yes. I understand that in libertarian circles, they may have jacked your head up. You think you're bigger than you are. You're not, right? You're not so big that you can just be dismissive of people. It's just being a dick. You know what I mean?
There seems to be a grandiosity and an egotism to guys like Scott Horton and Dave Smith because they've gotten their asses kissed by the libertarian community. many of whom, especially on the issue of Israel, have their heads up their kulus. And so they've become celebrities by virtue of the fact that they've attached themselves to this issue, not by virtue of the fact that they have talent in any other realm. I mean, let's remember, Dave Smith is a comedian who nobody knows from comedy. Everybody knows him only from the controversial stance he's taken in his podcast, which has gotten air because he know a famous comedian who's one of the top podcasters in the world. As far as his comedy goes, who the fuck knows?
Nobody. And you know, the thing is this, right? Okay, so I disagree with the guy. I disagree with a lot of people. There's a guy here, Jorge Basada. I disagree with him on virtually everything. You know, and I shouldn't say that, but on a lot of things. But, you know, the other day he called me up. We went out. We had coffee. Nice guy. He and I had a nice debate. We were able to film it. As soon as I can get a connection, I'm going to upload it to our channel, the debate that I had with him. We debated morality. Very nice guy. We disagree. I can disagree with people and still be friendly. I don't need to be a dick because we happen to disagree on things. It's just, it's really ludicrous. Now, I don't know if that's why he was an asshole, because from what I'm understanding from looking at, you know, a lot of the replies, because I posted about this on X, it seems to be a common theme that people think he's a dick. So it seems like that's just the case. But anyways, he is Dave's guru, Dave's go-to guy. So the reason that I sent you that link this morning, I went to, Dave is on a global apology tour right now for endorsing Donald Trump, because Dave is adamantly opposed to going to war with Iran. I don't know how he didn't understand that, whatever, he didn't know what Trump was. I don't know. But anyways, so he's running around apologizing. So people are criticizing him for being unprincipled. So Dave asked Grok, has Dave Smith changed his positions? So, you know, he got all positive responses to that. So then I came up with the idea and I said, are Dave Smith's positions on Israel are not positions. I shouldn't say that. Are his historical accounts of Israel accurate? And I got the answer. I read it and I thought that you would like to read it. So I sent it to you. You brought it up and now you can tell us about it.
Well, I mean, basically, the conclusions that Grok comes to are conclusions that anybody who has a brain and even a remedial knowledge of the conflict in the Middle East comes to, and that is that Dave Smith cherry picks his data, he cherry picks his information, he cherry picks quotes, he cherry picks what basically confirms his anti-state bias and his bias against foreign aid and his general libertarian ethics with respect to quote unquote violence, which seems to extend to a kind of pacifism and doesn't recognize retaliatory force as legitimate. So he's just more or less confirming his biases, is what he said. Although he's correct in naming some things, but Grok also points out that he relies on revisionist historians primarily for his information. He doesn't engage the Jews' concerns or Israel's concerns. It's a very one-sided perspective, and I've of course given Dave a tons of titles to work with, including Ephraim Karsh, who completely obliterates every single revisionist historian that Dave likes to quote, and presents an irrefutable case for why they are cherry picking from primary sources in order to promote their ideological perspective and not the truth. Of course, he's not going to read Karsh. He should, but he won't. And if he did, he might have a very different perspective about the Israel conflict over there, which he pretends to be nuanced about. But there's nothing nuanced about his at all. No, not at all. Not at all, unless you consider cherry picking data and cherry picking quotes.
The situation, Mark, over there is so complex. I spent an awful lot of time reading about Jewish history, Israeli history, when I was incarcerated, enough to where if I just wanted to be dishonest, I could go out and win a lot of debates. But I understand that there's many different angles and many different perspectives from which to look at the issue. I don't have the time to do a deep dive investigation into every single claim and every, single sort of confrontation that Palestinians and Jews have had. So for the most part, I don't get into big debates about it. The only thing that I will argue is that Jews have a right to have a country. Jews have a right to defend themselves. I will defend their moral right. I will also defend the moral right to retaliatory force as an aspect of self-defense. But beyond that, I'm not going to get into it. But what Dave does is he goes out and he finds a bunch of historians for, according to what Grok says. This isn't just my, opinion. He finds the historians that agree with him and then regurgitates what they say and uses that to make an argument. It's not, he doesn't, like the article, like the Grok says, he doesn't even address nuance, but nuance is important. Not always, the cult of moral grayness, Ayn Rand's great essay tells you, that there's issues that are black and white, but some aren't. Some are difficult. You have to get into it. But Dave, for instance, you never hear him address the role of Islam, for instance, in the conflict, right? Like if you were going to address, I can't remember the guy's name, Goldstein or something. He was a Orthodox Jew who shot up a Palestinian area or something years ago. But if you were going to bring that up and not mention the role that his religion plays in it, the role that he sees Judaism as promising the land to the Jews and that sort of thing, you would be derelict, right? Because if you're going to cover it, you have to cover what.
Goldstein, who, by the way, has no street named after him in Israel. He's not worshipped in Israel as a hero. There's no murals painted on him. He's not mentioned in schools as a nice guy. He's serving life in prison and now regrets what he did. That it also should show a difference between the types of societies that we're dealing with.
Yes, that's precisely my point, is that you just don't pick the information that you like. If you're talking about American history, you don't just mention that Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence and was a freedom fighter and just in a constitutionalist and ignore the fact that he violated the Constitution in order to get the Louisiana Purchase and that he was also a slave owner. On the same hand, you don't just focus on the fact that he violated the Constitution and was a slaveholder. You tell the whole truth, and that's what, in my view, Dave fails to do.
He does fail to do that. Ironically, he does what communists like to do, which is they understand on some level that most societies have mixed moral premises, and so they make all kinds of errors of judgment. They separate principles from action. They make pragmatic decisions all the time. They do bad things, and then they focus on those bad things, those moral contradictions in their societies, and they try to cast those errors, those moral errors, as a pall upon the entire society, as representative of the whole. Now, in the case of Israel, Israel has done bad things, sometimes in the fog of war, sometimes because at the time of their independence, there were 3 militia groups, often working at cross purposes with each other, trying to save Jewish people in Israel, in Jerusalem, by the way. One of the massacres he loves to talk about is that Dar Yashin massacre took place. He leaves out what was happening at the time. What was happening at the time was that the Arabs had surrounded and blockaded Jerusalem, a majority Jewish city, and were trying to starve the Jews out. Precisely what the pro-Pali people pretend the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians today. This is exactly what not even the Palestinians, the combined Arab forces were attempting to do to the Jews of Jerusalem. And so the various militia groups that were trying to fight to save Jerusalem and to save the several hundred thousand Jews that were living there had to take various villages along the road to Jerusalem to clear a path, a humanitarian path, if you might say, to get aid and food to the people who were suffering. And that village was part of the fog of war, fighting that happened, that leaves out tons of nuances in that story. It was considered a massacre. It's something that many Israelis look upon with deep shame. But it's also come to light that the numbers were greatly inflated, because at the time, the Palestinians were more or less a ragtag assemblage of folks organized by the Mufti who were attacking Jews and attempting to incite the Arab countries to jump in, right? The mandate was still there. The Arab states were waiting for the mandate to leave before they jumped into the war. And the Arabs who were the so-called Palestinians were attempting to convince the Arab nations to come into the war against the Jews. And so they inflated the numbers almost by 2 times in order to influence the Arab states to come in. Unfortunately, this had a terrible effect on the Arabs as a whole. It frightened them. It didn't solidify them. It didn't bring them together as a band to fight. It scared the crap out of them, because it was going around the countryside that the Jews were slaughtering and murdering, raping and pillaging Arab villages. And so what did they do? They left, in part because of this lie told by the Arabs in order to bring in the Arab countries. Additionally, you have one militia group that was trying to solidify all these militia groups together into one organized band of force. Yet, and so since another one went into this particular village, they've inflated the numbers as well, because they were trying to discourage these ulterior militia groups from fighting, often at cross purposes to what the Jewish authority wanted, which was peace with the Arab people. They didn't want to take the land over by force. They wanted to live and cohabitate with Arabs. They just wanted the Jewish state, but that would have had no effect on any Arab inhabitant. Anyway, he uses examples like that are extremely nuanced, that come within a context that he drops, and then he attempts to use that as an example of a Jewish barbarity against the Arabs, as if that is the common theme that identifies the way the Jews treated the Arabs from the time they started immigrating in the 19th century on, which is false.
Okay. So do you have anything more you want to say about Dave or about Israel, or do you want to jump to the next story?
Yeah, we'll jump to the next story. I have nothing to say about that. I think he's wrong, and I think he would do himself a favor as a man, as a aspiring intellectual, to read the other side. I have Scott Horton's book here, for crying out loud.
Which one?
And Enough Already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enough Already. Yes.
I got about 2 paragraphs in. I decided to put it down because it was already based on false premises. But I will read through the whole thing at some point, because I have to. I have to see what the other side is thinking. It's important. The thing I think I want to talk about first was the nuclear deal that Trump wants to have with Iran. What do you think of Trump's persistence with respect to attempting to make a deal with Iran? And from a perspective, what do you think of this?
Okay, so if we look at capitalism, there was once an essay by Alan Greenspan called "The Attack on Integrity" or "The Assault on Integrity." It's in Capitalism: The Unknown Ideal, and he talks about how it used to be, before all the regulations, that business was completely conducted and dependent on the integrity of the people making deals. Somebody tells you they're going to do something, you have to be able to trust their word. I agree. There is zero evidence that the Iranian regime can be trusted to make a deal. Zero. None. No evidence. In fact, in Shia Islam, there's a principle whereby they're allowed to lie.
This is called tikya, right?
I'm not sure what it's called. I just know that they're allowed to lie under circumstances. I don't know exactly what they are, but I'm pretty sure when dealing with the great Satan, lying would be acceptable. But he keeps saying deal, deal, deal because he's ultimately filled with hubris, right? He has an overextended sense of what he can accomplish, as is evidenced by what he claimed he would do with Ukraine, by his claiming how Putin likes him, how, he can trust Putin, whatever. So I think it's ridiculous. It's interesting because I got into some people challenged me. You were one of them when I said that I don't think that the United States should get involved in the war. One of the main reasons I don't think so is because of who's running the show. Because it's not as if we have the pinnacle of competence at the head. The people that are running the show are Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump. First of all, Trump equivocates based on the last person he talks to on what he's going to do. He's also one of the most dishonest public figures I've ever witnessed. When you accomplish his whimsical nature with, when you combine that, with his whimsical nature and his dishonesty, I have no confidence that they would carry out the necessary strikes, operate the war in the way that it should be operated. So that's one of the reasons that I'm opposed to the United States getting involved, because I saw what incompetence could do in Iraq and Afghanistan. Two wars that were eminently winnable. We went into those with this idea of winning the hearts and minds and all that stuff that has no business in war, right? And I've come under fire for saying that civilian casualties should be minimized, and I think they should, to the best extent possible. But when you're at war, that cannot be your primary consideration. And so I just don't think that the Trump administration could execute a war. So I think that we're, basically,
just so you know,
say that again. Yeah.
Just so you know, they don't have to execute the war. They can let Israel execute the war. All they have to do is give them the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs and let Israel do the work. And Israel will do it.
Well, but Israel is asking for us to join the war. Here's Ray Jacobs had asked a good question. So you think it would be Bush all over again? I don't know. I just know that, I just know this. If you look at the history of the 20th century, right, or late 19th century, so 1898, I think it was, and you think about, remember the Maine, for instance, to garner big lie to garner support for the Spanish-American War, the lies about what the Lusitania was actually carrying in order to garner support for World War I, the Korean disaster that we're still over there to this day. The Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution that got us over there into that quagmire. Then the weapons of mass destruction that were supposedly going to be found in Iraq that weren't found. 20 years in Afghanistan with nothing to show for it, but a lot of American debts and a lot of American money spent. So when the government tells me that Iran has weapons they're on the cusp of nuclear weapons, I'm skeptical. Partly because Netanyahu has been saying they're very close to a nuclear weapon since 1992. It's now 2025. Not that I don't believe they are, not that I don't believe they have nuclear ambitions. I'm just skeptical. And when you combine that skepticism with the incompetence that I think the government has, that's why I ultimately say, let Israel take care of it.
Yeah, Akira Felix says if Ronald Reagan couldn't be trusted to support Israel, Trump is not going to do it. Ronald Reagan, let's talk about some of these Republican presidents and how they've stabbed Israel in the back by not following principle. It was Reagan, who was supposed to be the cowboy, right, who responded to Hezbollah aggression, which resulted in the murder of over 200 Marines by withdrawing from Beirut. All right. Furthermore, after the PLO created a civil war in Lebanon and all the daggers were pointed at Yasser Arafat, who had up to this point been vying for some kind of political legitimacy in the world, it was the United States that bailed Yasser Arafat out and escorted him to Tunis. we allowed Yasser Arafat, who could have died in the 80s, to thrive and prosper until 2004. Additionally, we were the ones that put pressure on Israel to make the PLO a legitimate negotiating organization, a legitimate government, turning them into the Palestinian Authority. We forced Hamas down their throat because Bush had this stupid idea that everybody has democracy in their heart. Everybody in their heart wants to be free. And if we were going to hold elections over in Gaza, then the actual demographic has to be fully represented, because the Israelis didn't want Hamas to be represented in the elections. Bush forced it down their throats. Of course, this is something Dave doesn't ever talk about. He likes to talk about Netanyahu funding Hamas, which is a complete dropping of context, and also talking to political constituents about how Hamas will prevent the two-state solution from ever coming about.
It isn't just Americans, by the way, that have stabbed Israel in the back. I mean, if you look at the Suez crisis in '56, where Israel basically saved everyone's bacon, and then immediately after were condemned, I think, by the French and the British, but don't hold me to that because it's been a while since I've read about it. But deeper with Diego asks a question. So I don't know what he says. I think it's Iran's been killing Americans since the year I was born, and your position is pacifism because the president is an idiot. That's just odd to me. If it's correct, I don't get it. First of all, my position is not pacifism. If there were a military strike on the American homeland, I would say you absolutely have to respond. But we can't, first of all, to act as if our problems with Iran started in '79 is to ignore an enormous context of the Americans propping up the Shah in Iran. I'm not saying that justifies Iranians killing Americans. What I'm saying is it's an example of why I don't trust the American government.
Yeah, you can't look. The American government has primarily run by this, what they consider this maxim, which they consider an axiom: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so
Right.
they will prop up somebody who's bad or less bad. Because they're trying to avoid what they think is a worse enemy. And of course, they propped up the Shah because they were trying to counter everything in that region post World War II revolved around the containment of communism and attempting to keep the Soviet Union holding Soviet imperialism.
So in addition, for instance, to what I named before about the lies the government's told to get us into war, there's ramifications of wars that you cannot see ahead of time. I'll give you three quick examples. World War I, we got involved to make the world safe to democracy. You end up with tilting the balance of power in Europe, helps to pave the way to World War II. World War II, what happens? We have to get rid of Hitler. I agree. But in order to do so, we side with the Soviets. What ends up happening? We have a near 50-year Cold War with the Soviet Union. Afghanistan, we side with the Mujahideen because we've got to battle the Soviets. What ends up happening? The Taliban takes over. We end up having to fight Al-Qaeda. Then we could even go forward. We topple Saddam Hussein. What happens? Al-Qaeda in Iraq takes hold, followed by ISIS. We end up having to fight ISIS. And I just don't know the consequences that are going to come if we completely decapitate Iran. Not only that, but we don't exactly have the most competent leadership, which is a huge problem.
Well,
now let me just say this. I wouldn't be totally upset. I'm not adamant against a strike on Iran. What I'm saying is, if you come and tell me, listen, you have to make the call, I'm completely responsible for it right now. I'm going to make the call whether the Trump administration wages war on Iran. I'm saying no. That's
so
my current position.
But there seems to be one of the things I like about Iran is that it seems to be one of the few places in the Middle East that has the potential for a deeply liberal political movement there, and that there are a lot of people that are chomping at the bit to get the mullahs out of there. This is not a small portion of the population, but they need the urging of I think and support. Yeah. Of America, which was absent during the Green Revolution.
You know where I've heard this before?
When we were silent when we were silent and during the Green Revolution.
No, before that, I heard this. I heard that and I read this in the Weekly Standard, in the National Review, that we're going to topple Saddam Hussein. We're going to be greeted as liberators, and when the Shia take over the country,
that's
it's going to be
different.
good.
That's not the. I mean, that's not the case with Iran. That's not the case with Iran. I think. Look, here's what I think. Reagan supported the Mujahideen against the atheist communists. He felt that brothers in belief would be united. Because of his religious blindness, he supported the Mujahideen. I believe the same thing happened with Bush. Bush was equally blinded by his Christianity. He felt that rather than attack a theocracy, which is probably more in keeping with his sort of moral and religious standards, he went after the Ba'athist regime, the secular regime, the socialist regime. Blinded in the way that Reagan was, and of course created a power vacuum because, of course, Iraq was balancing the power against the hegemonic ambitions of Iran. Now, there's no question that Iran is trying to extend its hegemony all over the Middle East. There's no question that Americans have been murdered by Iranian proxies, that war has more or less been declared since '79. I say it's been declared because they invaded American property and held American hostages for 444 days. And they have served as an inspiration to every Islamist group out there that it's possible to take down the great Satan. So as far as I'm concerned, every lone wolf, every ISIS sympathizer, every Islamist that has murdered people on American soil, and there have been more than one, has been inspired by Iran. We don't have to get directly involved. We only need lend the ordnance to Israel to get the job done. And I do think the Iranian people can replace the mullahs with something better. They were better even with the Shah. As bad as the Shah was, 1950s Iran was a far better, more progressive, more cultured society.
Then why didn't they just vote him in?
No, I'm saying.
Why did my question is, why did the United States have to overthrow a democratically elected government in order to install the Shah?
Because they were pragmatists. I'm not saying they did the right thing.
Mark,
the result of all that was far better than what we see today.
My only question is this: do you have zero skepticism? One, that it's going to just be very easy to topple the regime, and two, that once you do so, the Iranian people are going to create basically another Israel in the Middle East. Do you have no skepticism about that? Because I can't.
I had skepticism with respect to Iraq. I didn't think that people would gravitate towards a democratic government. I was right. They ended up filling the vacuum with Iranian Shia fanatics. I do think it's going to be more difficult than simply just destroying their nuclear sites and taking out their ability to sell oil. It's there because there is a large portion of the population that is radicalized as well. But it's going to have to be a civil war that the liberal faction of that country is going to have to win. And I don't know. In the end, I don't know if there's no certainty with respect to whether that's going to happen or not.
And that's my fear. But anyway, so we have Jim Valiant in the audience, and I'm here to announce. I'm going to give a little teaser. I have a huge interview I'm going to be doing with Jim Valiant when I get back from Porcfest. Huge. It's going to be huge. It's going to be big. We're going to do a very bigly interview, but seriously, it's going to be a very great, it's going to be a great interview. Robert says uncertainty and skepticism, not synonymous. I'm saying to you, what I'm saying, Robert, is that my uncertainty makes me skeptical about the claims of the coming out of, a lot of power structures about what's going to occur and how easy it will be.
And your uncertainty comes from something justified, which is government has a long record of total and absolute incompetence.
And lying.
And this is even considering people who are ensconced in the pantheon of great statesmen. Still, we have deep incompetence. And you mentioned, I think, one of these during World War II. Roosevelt is considered by many to have been a great wartime president, but he allied ourselves with the Soviet Union and paved the way basically for the Cold War that basically lasted for the next 50 years in conflagrations all around the world. It was a pragmatic decision, unprincipled in every way, of course. That's Roosevelt, and led to the deaths of tens of thousands of people and the spread of communism around the world. Since communism was never repudiated as an ideology in the battlefield as Nazism was. So we have also in the news today, the American Bar Association is suing the Trump administration over alleged campaign to intimidate law firms. I guess he's issued a few executive orders against specific law firms, one of whom was responsible for creating the Steele dossier, which was considered fake, which has been proven to be fake. Which kept a investigation going all through the entire first Trump administration, which was fake, wasted millions upon millions of taxpayer dollars to try to prove this fake conspiracy. Now, I don't think the administration should align itself against lawyers. I think that is a bully tactic. But he probably does have a case in private court for defamation. He probably does have a private case for malpractice to sue these lawyers who deliberately and intentionally attempted to ruin his career. But to use the arm of government and his executive power to get revenge on these folks seems a little bit sketchy to me. What say you?
I agree with you. I'm also not certain, but certainly willing to be convinced that the report that was done by the Steele dossier was the sole evidence that was used in order to get warrants and things of that nature. I believe it was part of it, but I also believe there was a lot more to it. But overall, Mark, I agree with your principle. If he's got an issue, sue people in court. You don't use the arm of the government when you're the head of the executive branch to get revenge on people. That's just
that said, the article implies something, and this is a James Valiant question, and he's here with us, so it would be great if you could answer it. That the president does have the authority to hire and fire these folks and to set certain standards for them. One of the standards, of course, that he's using in his executive order is the abolition of DEI standards. Now, of course, I believe that any private organization could use any standards they wish in their hiring processes. It's not up to the United States government to set these standards. However, if the United States government is hiring people, should they be allowed to say, we refuse to accept these standards in contracting you for government jobs? That doesn't sound bad to me, but James, if you can weigh in on this, I'd be interested in your perspective. Because as a person who believes in meritocracy, I think DEI is a scourge. But if you're a private company and that's the way you want to hire people, you're more than welcome to do it and let the market decide whether or not that's effective for you. Same goes with being a law firm. Although I think some of these law firms might be defending DEI principles and making lawsuits on behalf of the DEI movement. Again, I'm right. Okay, so good. He says I'm right again. All right, there you go. So of course
he's going to say you're right.
Because we're in collusion with each other.
No, you're right. Can I tell you something real quickly? So yeah. I just get this thing on X. And this is why I got to tell you, like some people on this planet, I just really, I don't know. It's like the guy says about Scott Horton, he's been cool every time I've met and talked with him. I've seen him have limited patience with people saying stupid things. So I'm inclined to think it was your fault. Like, I don't know, dude. Yes, you're right. I'm an idiot. I must have said something dumb, despite all of the people that are saying, yes, the dude's an asshole, but he was nice to you So he's nice. But just this thing where these people have where they want to come in, you're an idiot, you're dumb. It's just like, I wonder what world these people grew up in where you run around talking like that to people and there's never a consequence. I really do. Because I don't know, people that acted like that where I went from got punched in the nose. I mean, and then you learn, you just don't be an asshole to people. Right. So like what is going on with the incivility in this world?
Part of it is that, the kids growing up today are totally insulated from the consequences of their actions because their parents want to bring them up in a completely risk-free environment. And so they're risk averse, but they also don't understand that, the crap that they do has an effect. And in the times that I grew up, when I walked to school barefoot in the snow 5 miles, you learned really quickly if you were on the right path or being a jerk. You learned it the hard way, if you had to learn it the hard way, and you hopefully adjusted your behavior after that. So there's nothing better than the moral corrective of a good stiff jab every once in a while. I've had more than my share in my life. And they put me on the straight and narrow. I have to thank everybody in my past, whoever whooped my ass, that they did me a favor. And there's certainly lots of folks today in the younger generation that could use a good ass whooping. Now, that doesn't sound very capitalistic, and that doesn't sound very freedom oriented of us to say that. It sounds like we are warmongering, angry guys.
Yeah, I'm with you, dude.
But are we? Are we warmongering?
No, I'm not at all. And that's evidenced by let me just tell you, it's evidenced by the amount of crap I take from people on a daily basis. Like, I've had a lot of very messed up things said to me, said about me, people doxing me, and I just basically bitch about it. I mean, I'll talk about it, but no, I'm not a warmonger. I'm a very peaceful person. Nobody is ever going to be at any risk from me. But I do wonder about people when I see them behave that way. Like I just don't. I don't get it. I don't talk to people like that. I'm very, I just posted to X. I get along with virtually everybody that I come across, including people with whom I disagree vociferously. But that doesn't mean I have to dislike them, and I can debate with them civilly and then be nice to them, and that's it. I go to Dunkin' Donuts. I say please. I say thank you. Have a nice day. Whatever. I don't know.
Don't go to Dunkin' Donuts, Michael. Don't do the donuts, man.
I don't feel the need to be a jerk to people. It doesn't make me feel better to be a dick. There was a time when I was a teenager when I was a massive dick to people, all the time. But,
let me ask you
not a teenager anymore.
I want to jump on that because it seems like a lot of the anarchists that I have the unfortunate luck of contacting on social media, they seem to be stuck in a sort of adolescent stage of development. They don't seem to have grown past that 14-year-old stage.
I have a question for you. It just occurred to me. Speaking of unpleasant people, I'm sorry. I thought you finished the thought. I apologize.
No, I did, but I wanted to get your answer to it before you answered the question.
I don't have that experience. It's hard to say because when you're on X, for instance, it's a big bubble. Right, that you're in. The algorithms feed us people that we either agree with or disagree with, so it's hard to tell. But I have come across people that I have been wicked pricks, predominantly in the streams of people, in Dave Smith's stream, for instance, or the what are those people? The Christian nationalists and the commies.
and the Tower Gang or whatever they're called.
Yeah, those guys. But by and large, the intellectual anarchists, the people that are actually interested in ideas and not just slinging mud, those guys, no, I don't have those. I don't have those experiences.
I mean, Tom Woods uncharacteristically started slinging mud at Gad Sad recently, and claiming that Gad Sad won't debate Dave Smith because he's afraid he'll get whooped. Gad Sad. So that really bothered me because I have listened to his show and considered him an intellectual and at least a guy who had a modicum of class with the people that he would interview. To see him slinging mud,
well,
at an intellectual like Gad Sad in favor of a creepy, lying, fame-seeking dude like Dave Smith, that really bothered me. That dropped that whole movement down a peg for me.
Well, and Maurice S says the Gadfather and Dave Smith's back and forth on Twitter is so childish, and I agree. I've paid attention to what led to this, and Gad is by no means the innocent party in this. He goes after.
You know what?
Huh?
You know what though? He's funnier than Dave.
But that's not the point, though, Mark.
It is for me. His comebacks are
okay, but that's no, I can't. I can't because I have to admit, I've laughed at some of the things he said to Dave. I admit that I laughed at it. But the fact of the matter is he has said childish things to Dave. He has instigated with Dave. He has gone after him. Dave hits back. They go back and forth. But when Tom criticized him, and I'm not a Tom Woods fan by any stretch of the imagination, but when Tom criticized him, Gad's first response was, "Oh, this is anti-Jewish stuff." And I just think that's such BS. You want to start fights with people, engage in these internet wars, and it's good for your, to get clicks and followers and all that. I get it. And I'm not raining on the guy's parade. But when someone hits back and your first thing is, "Oh, this must be Jew hatred," that causes me to just lose a modicum of respect for the guy. He's part of the problem in this situation with Dave. I can't see I have to admit he's been funny. I'm not denying it.
He outcomics the comic. So I'm a personal friend of Gad, so I got to be on his side. Just because I'm a ride or die type of guy. I don't agree with a lot of what Gad says. In fact, I remember going to dinner with him one time, and he was talking about this might not have been The Parasitic Mind. It might have been the new book that he's coming out with. Oh, my dog has breached his container. And I corrected him on something, and I could see his hackles rise because a non-academic was correcting a credentialed tenured professor on terminology. He wasn't mean about it, but I could see that it got his goat. And he said, "Well, this is the accepted use of the term." I don't even remember what the term was, but I noted it. I noted that I got his hackles up, and I'm on his side too. I've had dinner with him a couple of times. I think he's a great guy. I think he's super funny, super witty, and for the most part, he's fighting the good fight, but he's coming down on the side of the conservatives, the Jordan Petersons of the world, and not on the correct side. So he's got a lot of intellectual inconsistencies. I have to save my dog, so I want you to start talking about, unless you have something else to say, please. The next article is about the suspect in Minnesota who shot the speaker of the House there. And,
okay. The thing that I found most interesting about this was the amount of people on the right that I immediately saw saying this must be a left-wing nut job. Mike Lee was tweeting over the weekend, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way," or some such thing. But all the evidence that I've seen, and it's by no means conclusive, but it certainly indicates that this guy is from the right. I mean, he's going after Democrats. He had a list full of Democrats, and he seems to be very anti-abortion based on what they found. And yet the people on the right are insistent that this must be a left-winger, and I just find that bizarre. I think that a more sober approach would be to say, well, let's just wait until we get all the evidence to determine what the motivation was. But what I've seen so far indicates that the guy's on the right. I'm not convinced of it. I'm just saying that's where it is. But yet they still are claiming this is a left-wing radical. Yeah, so this guy in the talk, see, a right-wing guy, dangerous loaf of bread, says, no, he's a leftist. That you're wrong, I'm pretty sure. I haven't seen one shred of evidence yet to indicate that this guy's a leftist. Not one. Doesn't mean he isn't. I don't know. I'm not.
Nor have I. And the fact that he was appointed by Waltz to an unpaid position in the council doesn't make him a leftist.
No. It was a nonpartisan position that he was in.
And he was appointed by a Republican as well previously. And he's a registered Republican, I believe. Is he registered?
I'm not. I haven't seen that, but this is what I'm like. Okay, so dangerous loaf of bread here says he had the anti-abortion stuff to make himself look like a righty. He had so here's the problem. Like in dangerous loaf of bread, this isn't to pick on you, but this is a mode of thinking that I've seen when it comes to this issue. When you say, well, he had that because he's trying to make it look differently. What that tells me is that when that's the line of argument, there's no evidence that's going to come that's going to say, okay, he's on the right. Because whatever comes, we just say, no, that's part of the conspiracy to make it look like something different. And by the way, that's the nature of every conspiracy theory I've ever come across. All disconfirming evidence is just further evidence of the conspiracy. In other words, it's just a circle of arguments that there's no escape from and no way to convince people otherwise. So, Mark, go ahead.
I agree. There's no evidence to suggest this guy was a leftist at all. Has he been captured? Do you know?
Yes, I believe so. I believe I saw that he was captured.
And he left a manifesto, an extensive manifesto, not only a list of about 50 people that he wanted to assassinate, but a manifesto. So, we'll find out as this case goes to court and the evidence gets exposed to all of us, what exactly this guy's motivations were. But we certainly are living in times, Michael, where people are becoming more inclined to believe that violence is an appropriate means of is an appropriate type of political protest. And even not just breaking things and burning things, but hurting people and or intimidating them and or killing them is a viable source of is a viable form of political protest. Now we've seen the left talk about this in spades, and none of them have been censured, as far as I know, or kicked out of office. Everyone from Schumer to Maxine Waters has deliberately incited violence out there in the streets against opposition. They should, I mean, that in itself should disqualify them from their jobs, because that is not protected speech, and it has led directly to violence. Maxine Waters, who requested that her constituents directly confront Republicans, led to conservatives being confronted in restaurants, harassed, attacked while they were eating dinner, sometimes physically assaulted in the streets. That she should be prosecuted for that, because that is incitement. And so I think, loaf of bread or whatever is what he sees is.
Well, in his defense, he came around and said, okay, I might be wrong, which I respect. Yes. Whenever somebody does that, I respect it, because I certainly do it, because I've been wrong in the past. As hard as that is to believe, I know.
Yeah, it is hard to believe, but you're often wrong with James Valiant and I when we're on the same program.
No, the two of you are more wrong than anybody I know. You two are in a cabal. No, I think that you probably stack the comments with your people, and that's what's happening.
Wrong and James do not go in the same sentence, folks. Please remember to like and or subscribe to the station if you like the program. Even if you don't, hit like, just because it does good things for the algorithm. Now you're going to be at Porcfest all week, and so we're going to be
No, not all week. No way, man. I got to get back and make some money, but I will be here tomorrow. Today and tomorrow. I'm supposed to be giving a talk at 1 o'clock. It's difficult to situate around here, but I'm sure I'll figure it out and be able to give that talk. It will be recorded. It will be posted. I am having an actual fun time here. There's so many nice people. And, you know, the libertarians around, you know, we give them a hard time, but a lot of them are on our side on far more issues, and they are opposed. And, you know, I plan on making it a part of my talk that even if we can't win them to our party, there are certainly issues with which a lot of them we can work with them on. I think that that's the way to go. There's a lot of nice people. You know, a lot we disagree with vehemently, but the people I'm meeting here are very, very nice people. But I do intend to win many of them over. Ashley Shrug says, make frenzies. I plan on it, but let me just say that along with making frenzies, I'm sure I will be pissing people off because I seem to have a knack for it.
Well, you and me both. That's probably why we get along so well. So with that uplifting note, I think it's your turn to do the capitalist thought of the day. So,
are you crazy?
Yes.
I did like 3 shows on my own, and now you're back and you're like, it's your turn.
Didn't I do it the last time?
The last time you were here.
Oh, okay. Well, so then I guess I will give the capitalist thought of the day because Michael's too afraid to.
Oh my God. You know, Jim called me a chicken on Facebook the other day. Jim says, you know, how about we debate this topic about, you know, striking Iran or Iran? Who the hell knows how to talk it?
Capitalist Party, yeah.
So I don't think I answered him right away. And he's like, oh, do I hear chicken noises? And I'm like, really, dude?
And he's just telling you the truth, man.
No, he's not. No, see, this is the problem with the two of you. We need to really, I think, maybe have an intervention. Robert Naser maybe will be involved in this intervention, and we are going to straighten the two of you out. But
yeah, and chickens do play an important role in life, as Robert aptly points out. So,
and they're very tasty.
He's not marginalizing you.
No, but the chickens are very tasty.
Chickens are very tasty. All
right.
So, okay, hold on. Let me take care of Frank, who is stuck. There we go. All right, so I have to make this quick because Frank is skating across a very slippery floor, and it's not pleasant for the poor guy. So yes, look, right now you are at Porcfest with other liberty-minded people. We are going to build coalitions with the folks that agree with us more than they disagree. We're going to build friends. We're going to influence people. We're going to bring people into the fold of the Capitalist Party. What is the Capitalist Party, folks? The American Capitalist Party is the only party that consistently abides by individual rights. That is the principle that guides all of its actions and all of its positions on the platform. If you want to be free, there you go. There's the great Andy Bernstein book. If you want to be free, if you want to take your moral agency back, if you want to be the captain of your own destiny, join up right now, AmericanCapitalistParty.org, donate, help this become the movement of the future, because the collectivists are trying to take it. They're trying to take it right now. They're trying to paint the false dichotomy that the left and the right are meaningless, so take communism. No, communism is not the answer. Capitalism is the answer. Freedom is the answer. Your life being your own responsibility and an end unto itself is the answer. All right. So please remember to hit the like and subscribe button. We will see you here tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat place.
No, I got a question for you about the same bat time. Can we start 15 minutes early tomorrow? Because I have to give the talk at 1 o'clock.
Yes, we can.
All right. We'll be here tomorrow at 11:45, and everybody hit that like button.
And that's 8:45 Pacific for everybody. And remember, you've got 24 hours now to check your premises. So please remember to do that. Thank you very much. Peace.